Well, welcome. Hopefully, I gave you a little teaser earlier today, and hopefully that's why you're here, right? So we're going to start off with a little bit of history about kind of what we've done. So we started off actually 3 years ago with telecom expense management. FinOps was kind of started. We've had 3 different starts with 3 different people, and it kind of didn't work out very well. So they hired me, and so far, so good. The TEM was kind of what we would look at as the first scope that we implemented. And then public cloud was that next scope for us. But this is where we want to talk about it. I think that you need to create also custom scopes for yourself, right? There's areas of technology within your enterprise that you can actually provide value for. So don't be stuck with just the ones that the foundation creates, that you can also look for other technologies. And I was mentioning in the keynote that there's this new term called technology optimization. And it's really kind of the responsibility with the FinOps teams to go ahead and understand all the technology in the enterprise to look at how you can optimize those technologies. I even know people doing copiers and printers still, and they're optimizing that. They're going on different types of contracts. It doesn't have to be a workload optimization. It can be a rate optimization as well as one of the capabilities within the FinOps Foundation, the framework. So I want you to think about at least 4 scopes. And we talked earlier about the fact that you want to reduce usage and reduce unit costs. And that's the same process for everything that we're going to go through. So how do we start? Well, we think of these scopes as 4 different practices. And so we have 4 different specialists and 4 different disciplines within this process, still using the same capabilities across all 4. And that gives us the opportunity to look at some of the uniquenesses within each of the scopes and really focus on different parts of that. For example, within public cloud versus SaaS, you're looking at workload optimization versus license and user optimization. So it's a very similar process that you're going to go through, but you're going to handle it just a little bit differently. And I know some of these are from what you saw earlier today, because the JR was like, can I steal some of these and put them in the keynote? So really look to see within your enterprise, to see who else you can, I don't want to say leverage, but partner with to actually help you along the lines. Because there's so many different areas within the organization for technology optimization that you can't do it all yourself, and that's just a fact. We don't have enough budget, we don't have enough team members, we just don't have enough time. So you rely on other people within the organization that have that area of expertise that can then give you the information. And a lot of that is you're going to integrate them into what you do in your reporting. I talked about health scores earlier today. I'll get into more detail about that. So these are the 4 domains and then the different capabilities that you have within the public cloud scope. And so you look at this and say, okay, cloud sustainability, is that really going to come over to private cloud? Probably, because you're going to have embedded carbon in the cabinets and all the different technologies that you have there. Are you going to continue with workload optimization? We talked about that before. Are you going to be having onboarding workloads? Is that going to be something you're going to be doing in SaaS? Maybe not. Probably not in, telecom expense management, but maybe you are. It just depends on how you want to manage that. The big things that you want to keep that are fairly consistent: data ingestion, allocation, planning, forecasting, budgeting. That's kind of all the same across. You're going to find there's another session later on about focus for SaaS, right? So those are data sets you want to really be looking at. But as you start to look at this, you start saying, okay, great. From public cloud to private cloud, there's even less than what you had before, and you may be naming it differently, right? Because if you go back to public cloud, I can try. So you have cloud-based objectives. You have cloud, FinOps practice operations, where if you go over to here, it's just practice operations. So you're going to change some of the wordage that you're going to be using for the different scopes, but the function is still pretty much the same. Same thing for SaaS, a little bit less than you had before. Go back, okay, sure, no problem. Take a picture, all good. I'll sign them later. Okay, no problem. So SaaS, again, fewer capabilities, and then as you go on to communications, again, a little bit fewer capabilities. But again, what you have within the FinOps Foundation, the framework, is you have that starting point that you can start extending it out to these other scopes or these other technologies even. And so you can start to look and see how they relate. You'll find reporting to be somewhat similar as well. And so as you go through the process, just make sure that you're accounting for the right things. So what opportunities are we looking for? So this is the framework with all the loveliness that we talked about. But in public cloud, we want to get rid of the laziness. And we all know there's tons of laziness in there, right? And obviously waste. Business hours are a great way. No hands on keyboard, no tech, no engineering, none of those people, dare I say. None of the engineers you have to work with, because this is a business issue, right? Should dev be on 24/7? The answer is no. It doesn't have to be. We recently did a round of business hours for our non-production, and the highest level of savings we had was 55% discount, 55% reduction, I should say. And that's significant, right? And all they did was we broke down the hours into what we call standard hours, which was 8 to 6. Then we use extended hours, which was 6 to 8. Then we have after hours, and then we have weekend hours. And so what we did is we went to all the teams and said, what works for you to shut things down operationally for non-prod? Because prod we're not going to touch. And it came out that mostly everybody was good turning it off on the weekend. We found a few people were okay doing it after hours, less during the extended hours, and everybody obviously was on during the standard hours. So we approached that aspect, and we were able to save, I think it was 12.8% within 30 days, which is fast. No hands on keyboard, no nothing, right? So this is purely a business tactic. And one of the things that I've mentioned before in the past is that myself and Brett Eubanks had developed a tactic modeler. It has about 140 tactics in it, and we open sourced it 2 years ago, and it's available for anybody. It's a template that has all these different tactics and business hours is on there. Commits, right? So we want to be able to commit. When we talk about commits to our engineering teams, we talk in terms of optimization. There are engineering-led optimizations, there are FinOps-led optimizations, and all the commits are FinOps-led optimizations. So we segment that and say, we're happy to take a recommendation, we're happy to take your forecast, understand what that looks like, and then purchase a commit off your forecast. Complacency. Yeah, I don't have time to do it. I don't have the resources to do it. There's a lot of excuses that can be done. But typically when we come across complacency, we actually create a policy to overcome the complacency. So like people weren't actually deleting their unattached disks. Well, we created a policy that went in and said, great, if you have any unattached disks in 30 days or 90 days, we're going to archive it, and then after that, we're going to delete it. I didn't have to rely on the engineering teams to worry about unattached disks anymore. I just created a policy around that. So when you have inaction and complacency, see if a policy can be substituted to help you with that. Accountability, that's pretty much big everywhere. Everybody wants to ensure that there's accountability for their spend. And that's the whole purpose of the technology optimization, is you bring that information together, and now you can go to a VP and say, hey, this is your public cloud spend, this is your private cloud spend, this is your SaaS spend, this is your communication spend. You can put all those pieces together. And that gives you the opportunity to then say, holistically, you actually have responsibility and accountability for $4 million in costs. Did you know that? Is that reflected in the budget that you manage? Sometimes it's no, right? So you just want to bring that awareness to them and all of their costs, right? Standards, so important. We want standards everywhere, right? We want people to do something stupid. We hate that. Patterns, so important. I talk about KPIs versus what I call KMIs. So KPIs typically in a form of measurement, you're going to have something that goes in, it lasts for 90 days, a quarter, like an OKR maybe, and then it ends, right? You've reached your goal, you're good, you move on. But KMIs looks at patterns. So you can take a KPI measurement, turn it into a key momentum indicator, of which now you're tracking that same pattern every month, and you're seeing what that pattern looks like. And now you're looking and saying, okay, great, I now understand. This is now an actionable piece of information versus a KPI may be good to know, but it's not necessarily actionable. So you want to get to measurements that are all actionable. Anomalies, this is the death of everybody. You either get an anomaly for 20 bucks or you get another for $2,000, right? So this is so important to understand because this holds the engineering teams accountable. So definitely important to make sure that you get back to them and say, hey, You're spending too much over here. Why did this happen? What was the issue? Oh, it was a data load we didn't anticipate. Great, now we know. Is that gonna happen again? Right, so that now comes into your forecast. So you have these conversations with your engineering teams, and you start to understand a little bit more about their business. And that gets you to a better place from a FinOps perspective. Education. Education is so important. I look at the consoles, and I look to see where our largest opportunities are. And I say, that's not just an opportunity for optimization, that's an opportunity for education. Because maybe they inherited the technology. Maybe they don't know it as well as they should. Maybe their skill set needs to be raised so they can create a more efficient environment. So that's what I use education for. Enablement, we're just trying to make sure that people are ready for their jobs and they can do it the best they can. Private cloud, again, kind of similar. We want standards, we want governance, asset recovery, right? So in private cloud or on-prem or data center, it's not an issue of cost savings, it's an issue of cost avoidance. Because you already have the sunk costs into all the assets you have in place. So now you want to make sure that you can either extend the length of that particular asset, or maybe you get something that's more dense, or you're not spending as much in the future, or you're looking at doing asset recovery, meaning that you have maybe some VM instances out there that are not being used. So now you kill those out and you can recover those assets for other projects. A complacency, yeah, that's pretty much everywhere. Everybody, it's like a human nature thing, right? Planning, so important for private cloud to make sure that you have your planning. Also, reference your architecture board. They're my enforcers right now. The architecture board says, you know, we're gonna have this standard, we're gonna do this moving forward. Have them be the bad guy. Don't be the bad guy. Have the architecture board be the bad guy. And tell them this is the things that you have to do from an engineering perspective. And a COE, Center of Excellence, those are pretty standard stuff. This is where we keep all our best practices. We have all our information in there for people to follow. We even have a series of recommendations if you want to optimize Databricks, or you want to optimize this, or you want to optimize that. We can go in the COE. They can look inside of Confluence and our COE documentation of Confluence, and they can look exactly what to do. We'll come up with a recommendation for them to do. We point them to the Confluence page. They have every instruction right there for them. So nice and easy, don't make it too difficult. SaaS. First thing you want to do is know what the hell you have. Inventory, what do I have? And then you can start prioritizing. You want to start categorizing from there, right? Do you really need 47 project management tools? Probably not, right? So this is all, we all have this problem. Right? And so these solutions are based on kind of what do you want to focus on? We have an app rationalization program. So for now, we own the tool, but our architecture team is going to own the tool moving forward because they will own app rationalization. So we'll use it. We have another team that's an ITAM team, IT Asset Management. They're going to use the tool. So it's not just for us. It's a shared tool across the organization with different responsibilities and different goals that we want to work through. User count, license, consumption management. This is so important to understand. The biggest issue that we had is contracts, right? Understanding how the contracts impact the licensing. What do we really have available to us? Where are we really going with this? So this is something that you need to spend a little bit of time on to understand what all the contracts say. Again, standards, enforcement. Again, our architecture team is our enforcement. Innovation, what do you want to look at? What do you want to innovate on? You know, we get probably a dozen or so requests a month for new software. We had to change our processes once we started looking at SaaS management because we decided to create an intake process that allowed us to then say, okay, do we already have the solution in-house? Why are they coming with another solution for another database that we have, 14 different databases already? Why does that need to happen? So we've actually created a process from this to make sure that as we look at new solutions, app rationalization is part of that process. Audit capability, you need to be able to audit. You need access to a tool that's going to do something for you. We use Xylo, and we've had great success with that. Insights, what insights are you creating that'll get you what you need to do, right? These insights can also give you measurements, and it's very specific measurements. Sure, I'll take question. I'm sorry? The tool, Xylo. They're downstairs in the thing, sure. And so, you want to look at these as part of your process, but measurements are key. I'm a huge fan of measurements. I measure freaking everything. Communication, unit price, utilization management, that's the big one, right? So that's gonna be, what's my bandwidth utilization, what's my network capacity. You wanna make sure that all of that is A, in the contract, but also B, you're managing to that, right? Another thing that we implemented was management of the actual vendor themselves. So we look at, what's their churn rate, net promoter scores, customer sat scores. We want to look at all of that for the vendor, for the solution perspective. And then we have operational measurements that we look at. And then we have financial measurements that we look at. So we try to bring a 360 view of our partners and how we want to work with them and their performance as well as our performance. So we can work together. Volume discounts. We actually consolidated all of our mobile to T-Mobile. 96% of our mobile is on T-Mobile. So what we did is we created a model where we're going to have a primary vendor, a secondary vendor, and an exception vendor. So the primary is going to have 80-90% of our workload, but we have a secondary vendor just in case the primary vendor doesn't quite work out, right? So we already have the contracts in place, we have all that stuff done. And the exception is really looking at, do we have contractual or compliance requirements to have this piece of software in our organization? So we keep that as a process. And so we're looking at mobile as that, and we've extended that out to what we're doing from a software perspective. So we use that same model of primary, secondary, exception. So that gives us what we think is a better plan for app rationalization. I don't think we're going to get down to 3 from the 47 things, but it's going to get us closer, right? It's going to save us some money somewhere, right? So volume discounts play a part of that. Consumption management, when you look at stuff like this, we're trying to figure out, are we consuming correctly? Is the utilization right? And therefore, is our contract correct? How flexible is our contract in this to adjust midterm, right? So we've worked very closely with our sourcing and legal team to ensure that we have that flexibility because we recognize that maybe something changes during the term and we need to reflect that in our contract. So we have the ability to go down and up. Microsoft has a term called true up, true down, right? So we do a lot of that in our contracts as well. Again, standards and insights are part of that process. So health check, right? Health check is really important. We have measurements for health check, but we actually look at it from a different perspective. We want to go to a health score. Health check gives us, yeah, we're up or down or we're doing good or bad, but I want to get more granular. I want to really understand kind of what the numbers are telling me so that I can kind of base this on my relationship. So I know we talked about this earlier too. So we have, for public cloud, we have Cloud Zero. For private cloud, we have our own tool. For SaaS licensing, we have Xylo. And then for communication or telecom expense management, we have Tango. So those are solutions that we use. So we extract the data and then bring that into our data lake. Our data lake is Databricks. We're looking to bring some other AI components into it. Right now we have an automated ingestion, but we want it a little bit more intelligent. So we're going to put some AI later this year to ingest different things that we want. Focus is also a big part. I didn't have it on my slide, but I had it on the keynote slide. We have Focus for all 3 clouds. There's Focus for SaaS now, and so that's expanding in the common data sets that you're going to want to take from these tools are going to get you what you need to make the correct measurements, again, to take the action that you need to take for a good decision. So we have a landing page that's a red light, green light kind of landing page. So if we look at sustainability as a health score, we have a red light, green light, and that's based on CO2 emissions as a trend, as a pattern. And so when we look at that, we say, okay, great. Last year we were however many metric tons. This year we have a 10% reduction plan. Are we going to hit it? So how do we figure that out? So we forecast by usage unit, not by dollars. And so we actually have a carbon emission unit rate that we apply to our usage unit, and then we can actually forecast out our carbon emissions as well. And so we have the ability to look at that and say, are we going to hit our number? Much the same as we do with our dollars for spend. Are we going to hit our number? Right? So it helps you a little bit along that way with your ESG team and figuring out, what contribution can you make to that. From a health score licensing, across all of these health scores, we have about 150 some odd measurements that help us understand. But on the dashboard, everything's consolidated into a score, right? It says red light, green light. If we're doing well, it's a green light. If we only want to look at red lights, we don't care about if things are going good. We care about things that are going bad. And so we focus that attention on the red lights, and then we bring everything. So a leadership can go in there and say, okay, well, pretty much everything's green, I'm good. They're done in 5 seconds. But they see a lot of red lights, they go, okay, what the hell's going on, right? That's what's important. We want to be able to alert them and have them understand what are we not doing right, and what are we doing to fix it. That gives us that ability to have that communication with our leadership, to have them understand, these are the challenges we have in front of us. Can you help us resolve these challenges? Again, that's part of the partnership you have with leadership, with having this type of information for them. Governance, I would say probably more time we spend on financial health scores and performance health scores. So performance health scores primarily on our private cloud. We focus on that because we're looking for asset recovery. We want to make sure that if something is underutilized, we want to take that asset back and reapply it to something else. So all these scores give you an actionable data set that's going to help you understand how to manage your environments better. And this helps that person. I don't have anybody from the data center or anybody for that reporting to me and my team. I rely on their leadership, and we have a monthly call, and we go through all the numbers, we go through all the assets, and we figure out, okay, where are we at? What are we buying? What are we retiring? How are we going to manage this together moving forward? And it's really a true partnership. Same thing with SaaS. I don't own ITAM. We have 2 VPs that own different parts of ITAM. And so I partner with them once a month. We have a conversation. We go through the numbers, and they're able to understand. At some point, my team will probably move over to them from a resource perspective because they want to own everything. There's a little bit of fiefdom stuff going on. I'm sure that's everywhere, right? And so, so the reality is that I may lose a resource, but that's fine. She does a great job for us, and she'll do a great job for them. Communication, I don't own any of that. I don't own the software. I don't own the people. Another team manages all of that, and I just get the information. I integrate into Tango. I export the data into my database, and I create all the measurements for them. And they're happy because they never had to do it, right? Should they have been doing that? Probably. But they don't have to do it now. My team does that, and it gives them all the information they need to manage the vendors. Not only that, but we do a good job with that. So what solutions are available to support your efforts? So I've told you kind of what we do. It's this little thing in the FinOps Foundation called Landscape. All the vendors are there. Take a look at it. Look to see what you're looking for. Odds are you'll probably find a solution there as a starting point, and then you'll probably do your Magic Quadrant kind of view as well, as everybody does. But you'll find that a lot of people are looking to the landscape first to see the solutions because they've already been kind of proven out by the FinOps Foundation, and this gives you an opportunity to learn more about it too. So scopes are not that different from each other. Measurements are critical to manage all the different scopes. You have to have your measurements down. Insight should drive decisions, right? So just not information. Everybody can deliver information. Not everybody can deliver an actionable insight. New personas are opportunity to expand your influence. I know I talked about this at the very end from a takeaway perspective. But if you start looking at different scopes, right, your influence will expand. I was lucky enough to be able to start this process at SaaS for our organization, and shocked. I had 15 stakeholders in less than 30 days. All these people were coming to me. So what's my software telling you? What's this? What's that? And it's like, okay, time out. Take a breath. We're going to be good. And so trying to help them understand their business, right? They're responsible. Maybe more likely they inherited it. So they want to know what the heck's going on. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to give them that information, that knowledge to help them along. There are opportunities in many places. You just need to find them and know how to find them. So when you look at this kind of stuff, you're going to see there's so much opportunity for you in the beginning, right? Once you get everything moving and you get everything going, you're going to be able to find what you're looking for. You're going to find opportunities that you can leverage. Asset management is hard. ITSM is hard, but it's well worth it. It's well worth the time and investment in making sure that you're doing things right. Leverage other teams and resources, and then create models that take advantage of your strengths for your team. I think that's it, yeah. I just left the rest of it for questions if you guys have any questions. Yes?
I'm coming over with this really cool box.
The box
that
thing.
I get to throw at you, and then you get to throw at other people. Who had the question? And I'll start over here, and then we'll pass it back this way. I don't play sports, so if this doesn't make it to you, that's what happens.
All right. It's soft, so if it hits you, you won't get hurt. So you were talking about, SaaS vendors and standardizing down from multiple overlapping vendors, I guess. Question one, have you guys successfully been able to do that? And then question two, I've found for teams, it's not always a cost driver. Sometimes you come with them with cost savings and they're like, it's too much effort. We have, feature timelines to hit. So how do you enable those teams to take on that work to exit that relationship?
Priorities, right? What's the priority for the organization? Yeah, we've had some tough conversations. I should say we have. Architecture team has had some tough conversations because they're the enforcers, right? So they've had some tough conversations that I've been a part of. And they were not taken well, to be honest with you. But this is the standard. You have to be able to be firm. You have to say, okay, what is the business reason for you to keep it? We have plenty of business reasons why we don't need it. But what's the business reason for you to keep it? And then we'll follow if it makes sense, and if they're, if it works, then yeah, we'll probably make it as an exception. But it will not probably be the primary or secondary one that we look with. And so far, we've been lucky with these conversations. We've identified applications, we've identified SaaS, we've looked at the categories, how many categories. We started with some ridiculous 160 categories. I think we're down to less than 40 now. And so it just really, what is your prioritization? How do you want to manage this moving forward? Because managing, hundreds of applications, hundreds of things, it's nonsense. How are you going to do that? And so we wanted to make sure that their app rationalization had the ability to look at what the applications were by category and decide how do we want to move forward. And it's in combination with the business as well. It's not just the tech team, right? We have to be able to understand any governance or compliance issues or legal issues that are bound us to that particular software. But it's setting the priorities to how you want to manage that. And it could be by dollars, it could be by user, it could be by transaction, whatever that behavior of that particular software is. That's what I think you should focus on.
Thanks.
Sure.
To you or to him.
Like volleyball.
They'll turn you down if you're too low.
Yeah, thank you, TJ. Quick question, can you please speak about how you organize, especially with maybe your data center group, sourcing, procurement, et cetera, and how did you manage some of the change management? Because as you expanded into some of these scopes and kind of brought them under what you're doing in public cloud.
Yeah, if we have an hour, I'm happy to explain that to you. But no, it's actually a really good partnership. Although we have our challenges sometimes, we want things to move along faster with sourcing and legal, right? But we've created a couple of processes. When I talked about the intake process, we also have a sourcing process and a funding process that we go through. So those can all be done in parallel, but allows us to go through each of the steps that appeases all the different groups. And those series of processes actually have streamlined a lot of things. It was painful at the beginning. What we thought would take like 2 weeks, took at the beginning almost 2 months. And then as we got better at it and we got more efficient, we actually got to less than 2 weeks on a couple of them. And so that actually helped us a lot. But it's just really the partnership you have and then creating the right process that works for your organization. That's what helped us.
Does your dashboard allow you to drill into what's causing, the red light, or do you go back to each individual scopes tool?
So from the reporting, the red light, green light, is that what you're talking about? So each measurement has a different score that we have. We do have some scoring that is informational only, but it's less than 10%. But most of the things are scored. So all the measurements below that have their actual scoring and their color as well. So we can see that, okay, this is red for these 17 reasons. All of these are bad. So then we start diving into why is it bad? Oh, our percent of unattached discs is more than 2%. That's why it turned red. How do we reduce that down to less than 2% so it can turn green again? So we look at these things as each different individual measurement that affects the overall score, and then we look at attacking each individual measurement as the issue becomes important to address.
Next question's in the back of the room when you're finished.
How are you instrumenting private cloud or on-prem, and perhaps have you been able to normalize it into focus? Just curious, is it how you're metering it, how you might be tracking that?
So in terms of focus, we're actually in the middle of that right now. We're identifying the different data sets that we need for that. Primarily, it's been around optimization within VMware has a recommendation engine. And so for optimization for that perspective. But we really do want to look at the cost avoidance and then the asset recovery are the primary goals that we have for the on-prem data center stuff. So that's what we focus on today. I'm sure there are other things that we will focus on, but right now we have to address those issues first, get those resolved, and then we can move on.
Very cool.
The microphone is padded, so give it a chuck right back here. If it bops you in the head, you're fine. We have insurance.
Just a bit outside.
Keeps it fun.
For your scores, I'm wondering when you start that, how you scale it. So it's like 100, your perfect score, and your first score as you release it, hey, we're at a 45, or something like that. Just thinking through introducing a score and what you're trying to communicate, or does it go above 100? There's no theoretical limit for how good or bad
That would be nice,
it could
wouldn't
be.
it? Yeah. No, we're 0 to 10 on the scores.
Okay.
And I've been doing this for 15 years. So I've seen a lot of different things and a lot of different measurements, and I kind of know what the percentages are for this type of waste for this particular service. And so I've been able to create a scoring model that is in alignment with that. And I'll adjust the scoring model up or down depending on kind of what we're consuming, what services we've changed to, kind of how things are moving along. But it's just my experience in being able to score this and being able to say, this is a bad score, this is a good score.
So an 8 today might be different than an 8 2 years ago because you expect more maturity.
Yeah.
So you're moving the goalposts.
Yeah, on average, a green shift is between 6.5 and 7. It's like, think of it a grade like a C. A 70 is just like a C in school, right? So, you get a passing grade with C, but anything less than a C, we're going to flunk you.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I had coffee in the other hand. So question for you, is the data lake the point where all your tools kind of pivot off of, right? So if we take all these things and we put it together, right, any number of tools we can use, and everyone has a different tool. So how do you manage all the different flows of information in all those different tools? Through the data lake, or you have APIs between all the,
Yes.
Okay.
So we use Databricks as our foundational database, and it's our golden source for all the data. Yes, we do have tools that are part of that data repository, but we bring everything into the data lake to make sure that that's our golden source, and we start, all our measurements are done from that. All the data is set in the data lake. But yeah, we have APIs that we bring stuff into. So the ingestion model is quite varied. We have spreadsheets that are sitting in shared folders that we ingest from. So it triggers when the spreadsheet changes and it's updated, and then it automatically updates the Databricks database.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Directly behind you.
I would love to say we're more sophisticated most of the time, but you do what you got to do.
Thank you.
Hey, TJ. One of the things you mentioned earlier was about your intake form, right? We're doing something similar we have a software review committee. I was just curious if you could double click in on that and tell us a little bit about some of the key entry points, data points, et cetera, that you're concerned about or looking for in that intake form?
So it's not new news, but in 2023, we were hacked, right? Nothing. We call it the incident internally. And so, we are working very closely with our security team, our deployment engineering teams. And so what we did is we went across 6 different teams and said, what do we need to make this good for us? What are the challenges that we've had in the past with deploying new software? So we created this intake sheet. It's about 17 questions, everything from, PII to SSO to how we want to deploy it, right? So all that information, and I think Zylo's here, you guys had that experience of going through the intake sheet. And so a lot of that has to do with making sure that everything's covered from the organization. Once the intake sheet is done, it's done, right? We haven't changed it yet in months. And so the challenge is do you have all the right people as part of that conversation to make sure that you have the intake sheet that you need for your organization? Does that help?
Yeah.
Or do you want?
One of the things that you mentioned was you're looking for, like, hey, do we already have a vendor in here who does this? And so
that's one of the questions, yeah.
Curious if some of the questions in there, like we're doing.
Are you saying you want our intake sheet? Is that what you're saying?
No. I wanted to compare notes, right?
Okay. Yeah. Honestly, I don't remember the entire sheet, but those are questions that are in there.
Cool. I'll just hand it off here.
If you have a engineering solution that you're trying to do that crosses and includes all of the 4 key areas that you're tracking, so not just the data from those pieces, but I want to optimize my system solution that includes all of them. How are you bringing those teams together? I mean, I think the biggest cultural divide I see is the on-prem folks, the private and the public cloud folks. And so often it's a bifurcated kind of battle, like where is this workload going to go? But what if I have a solution that crosses both and then all 4 of the categories? How do you bring those teams together to optimize the total solution?
So right now we do have solutions that go across 2 scopes, right? So we have Kubernetes, so it's in the cloud and on-prem.
Yep.
And so those are things that are managed by a whole different team. So from an optimization perspective, where do we come in from that perspective? We provide recommendations for containers. How do you right-size the container, the pod? So those are all things that we come up with recommendations for those teams, and they choose to execute them, or we actually require a business reason why they won't, right? So just to give you an example of kind of what we do, we recognized early on that engineers and engineering teams were not always as accepting as we'd like of our recommendations. And so what we decided to do is we took our top 20 subscriptions, and we said, we're going to have monthly meetings with you. We're going to talk about the numbers. We're going to talk about the budgets. We're going to talk about the forecast. We're going to talk about the optimization opportunities. So every month, I've got a 30-minute meeting with each of those 20 engineering teams, and we go through all of that so that everybody's clear, everybody knows where we're at, and so that we don't have any gaps in communication about what's going on with their workloads. I also do that with the other scope leaders. I have a monthly meeting, sometimes an hour, and we talk about these different things. What are we doing? What's our strategy? How do I make you more successful in what you're doing to manage your business? So we have those conversations as well. But it's really about communication. It's the soft skills of FinOps that really help you get that information and then allow you to then take that information and do something great with it and add value to the organization.
Great, thank you.
We got 4 minutes.
You talked about, just in that last question, when engineers or your teams might not approve a recommendation. Do you have a process to recycle those where, maybe it's not today, but we revisit this in 6 months? And can you expand on how you might revisit recommendations that were once declined?
So great question. So internal to my team, we track, I have the tactic model I talked about earlier. So each individual tactic has an associated key ID, and I can track the savings for each different tactic. And so if I submit a recommendation to a series of teams that's that one tactic, I track it by what is the overall, what I call the candidate recommendation. So this is everything, right? Even stuff that's going to save you $2 a year, right? This is everything. This is a candidate. But then we have a more curated that I talk to about them. So anything over like $1,000 or $5,000 in savings a year, we have a conversation. And then from that curated list, I ask them to make a commit. So what can you do in the next 30 days of this list? And then from that, we look at what the actual savings were, and then we have a missed opportunity. So that missed opportunity column tracks what they don't do. And so at the end of every month, part of that review process I call it a consultative call. I go in and tell them, hey, your missed opportunity is still $100K. What's going on? And so we start looking at, is that something I can do from the FinOps optimization process? I can buy an RI, I can buy a savings plan, whatever that is. Or is that something you guys have to do? Are you going to change your tier for that app services in Azure from a 3 to a 2 and save 50% simply by doing that? Right? So those are things that we talk about in these consultative calls, but we do track the missed opportunities. I think that was your question. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Yeah.
One more in the back corner towards where you entered.
Okay.
Good luck with this one. I think you can do it. That was pretty good.
Almost. I think you call that a Hail Mary, right?
Great work.
So, from organization change management perspective,
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
So, from organization change management perspective, what will be your best strategies to execute from point zero, and what will be those key personas if we are thinking to develop this solution in data lake? So, I believe sourcing and vendor management office can be one of the personas. So I would like to get the feedback from you, what challenges you have faced and how to build a business case if we are starting from point zero.
Yeah, so you have to make a list of your stakeholders, right? So what affects what you do from an operational perspective? So sourcing legal, definitely in there. FP&A, finance, definitely in there. Engineering teams, definitely in there. Leadership, definitely in there. Right? So there's a whole group of people that you need to identify first, figure out who they are, start creating a relationship with them. Going back to the soft skills of FinOps. Once you create that relationship, now you start providing them information that brings trust with that relationship. What do they need to know? How can you make them more successful in managing their business? That's a key piece of that conversation as well. What do you need that I can help you that you're not getting today? The odds are something within our FinOps purview can actually help them with that. So that's typically where I ask people to start, is build the relationships first. You can provide data to build that trust, and then you start from there, and now you start working on what do we need to do together to be more successful. That's my starting at zero kind of suggestion. I don't know if that helps.
Hey everyone, producer Andrew here. Thank you so much for watching and for your support. For more FinOps X 2025 content, go check out our YouTube channel. Like, subscribe, and leave comments and questions for all of our wonderful speakers. We appreciate your support.